Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today we're going to be looking at the Waves DBX 160 versus the Presonus Comp 160. We're going to see which one comes out stronger in a couple of different situations. We are comparing a couple DBX 160 emulations today, but before we dive in, if you are looking to dial in a repeatable workflow for getting professional sounding drum mixes, then I want you to go through my 3-step framework for mixing drums workshop. This workshop will walk you through my 3-step process that I use on almost every mix for crafting pro drum mixes right from your home studio. It's a 100% free to watch, on-demand video training, and you can just click the link in the video description to get access to that. Now let's jump in here and take a look at these two DBX emulations. Let me play the track where it's currently standing. These are raw recorded tracks, just running through some mix bus processing here. And that's usually where I use the DBX 160 compressor, to be honest, is on the input on drums, mostly on kick drums, so my kick in and out. And then sometimes on guitars as well, electric guitars, I like to run them through a little bit of DBX 160 compression, and sometimes on vocals. But we're going to look at drums here, and we'll look at guitars today. So here's where our track is currently standing with just some mix bus processing. Okie dokie here. Let's jump into, we'll do our kick in mic here. Now I have my recording processing here on the kick drum. It's just an API style EQ, the Alpine 550 here in Presonus, running into their Comp 160 or their DBX style compressor here. I'm gonna hit play here, and I want you to see what we're getting so far with just the Comp 160 here. I'll solo up the kick in mic. You can see how much compression we're doing. We are using a 2-to-1 ratio. Our threshold is at 0.19. And then we're adding 2 dB of makeup gain here. No key filter or anything like that. I'll hit play. You can see how much compression we're doing. And I'll A-B it as well so you can hear the effect that we're getting from it. We're doing about 6 dB of compression there on the bigger hits. And this compressor here, I like this Comp 160, this 160 style emulation, because it really helps doing this 6 dB of compression to tighten up the kick mic, and it helps to emphasize the attack or the beater attack on the top end as well. It makes our low end really tight too, which I like. Let's go over now here, and we're going to pull in, where are we looking? The DBX 160. We're going to pull in the mono one here because we're working on a mono track here. I'll have to go in here and we'll turn off or bypass the Comp 160. Here is our DBX 160. Just pulled in the demo here from Waves so we could compare it to the Comp 160. Just looking at the visual here, it's quite a smaller meter, so if you're used to looking at the bigger meter and seeing how much compression you're getting done, it's a little bit more challenging here, but you have a couple extra options, which is really, really nice. You have an input knob, we have a mix knob, which is always helpful, a high-pass sidechain as well. Although you don't have the option to choose what frequency comes in at, just a high-pass sidechain, and then you have the analog noise here as well. I don't think we're going to mess with the analog noise. You can see your input, output, or mix or gain change. I don't know if you can see that here. Nope, you're just seeing your gain reduction here on the Comp 160. So that's nice if you want to see your input, your output, or just the amount of reduction you're doing. We have our threshold. You can collapse it as well if you don't want to see that bottom section. I'm tired there. We have our ratio here, and then we have our output gain. I'm going to set the ratio the same here. I think we can double click, yeah, and put it in. We're going to do our 2-to-1 ratio here, so same as the Comp 160. And we'll start to pull our threshold down here to see what we can get with this Waves 160 emulation here. That's feeling pretty good there. We ended up at 0.55 here on the threshold, same 2-to-1 ratio, and I added about 2 dB of makeup gain here as well. It's nice that you can collapse that bottom section. We don't need any of that, the mix knob or anything like that. We're looking at our gain change here, probably doing about the same. It looks like we're going up to that middle knob there. I'm not sure if that's 5 or if that's 6, but we're somewhere around there. We can also see it here coming up on the meter. We can see the amount of compression we're doing on the meter here inside of Studio One. Let's A/B just this one now, and then we'll pull up our Comp 160 and do a comparison between the two of them. That's quite a bit tighter. We lose some low end, but that's okay. We're going to lose some low end from doing 6 dB of compression here on our kick drum, especially after our EQ. But that sounds quite a bit tighter to me. Let's keep this up here now, and we'll go over and pull up our Comp 160 here. And let's do a comparison between the two of them here. I do like the bigger visual here on the Comp 160. I like that we can see the amount of reduction we're doing bigger on the meter here. This meter is kind of small. The whole plugin's kind of small, you can see comparison-wise. They both have the below and above threshold light, which is nice to see when we're going above the threshold there. Let's hit play. We'll start with our Comp 160, and then we'll switch over to our DBX here, our Waves one. So starting here with the Comp 160, and then we'll switch over here. Both of them have the API beforehand here. That's a tough comparison there. The DBX 160, the Waves one here, is much, much tighter than the Comp 160, the Presonus Comp 160. But the Presonus Comp 160, I feel, preserves the low end of the kick drum a lot better than the DBX, the Waves one here. We definitely get some extra attack on the top end from the Waves one. because it's making the kick drum so much tighter, we get that extra emphasis on the top end click and the top end attack. We get some of that here from the Comp 160, but it's just not as tight as the Waves one. But I don't know, I love the low end we're getting from the Presonus one here. Let's dial in the noise here and see if we get anything from that. So I'm going to turn off the Comp 160 here, and we're just going to do the DBX here. We're going to dial up the noise here. That's interesting there. They're at 50% dialing up the noise there. It feels like it adds more focus. I'm not sure why that is. Up at 100%, that was quite a bit of noise. Here at 50, it's not too bad if we listen. It's not something that you hear, but always adding noise, you have to bear in mind that that's going to be there down the road when you start to boost top end up on your kick drum. And if you have to boost a lot of top end to get it to cut through a mix, if it's a metal mix or something and you're boosting quite a bit of that 8K to get that top end click and that beater attack, you're going to bring up that noise as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's do a comparison now that we have the noise in. It seemed like it added some focus there, and we'll compare both of them. Here's the Comp 160, and then we'll flip over to the Waves one. I don't know if that made them sound more similar. It definitely added focus to the Waves one. I still dig the low end that we're getting out of the Comp 160 here, but I like the tightness and the focus coming from the Wave style one here. So that's definitely a toss-up. I don't know which one I would be using there. It depends on, I guess, the situation. Maybe on a kick in like this, I would pull in the DBX, the Wave style one, to try and get that focus, and then on a kick out, maybe pull in the Comp 160 to try and preserve that low end and kind of mix them together that way. It kind of depends on the vibe you want and the instrument you're working on. Let's switch over here now. Another situation I like using the DBX 160 compressor on is guitar. It's a really, really nice guitar compressor. So we'll start with, here's our fat channel. We'll start with the Comp 160, and then we'll switch over and see what we can get out of the Waves DBX. We're going to go 2-to-1 here. Same kind of settings here. We'll start to pull down our threshold till we're doing some compression here on our stereo pair of guitars. Brings out some extra fuzz on the top end of the guitars, which is really, really nice. But listen to that kind of, it glues everything together, right? It kind of holds our guitars in place. That's the nice thing about the 160 style compressor on guitars. This one more time without, and then I'm going to kick it in. Listen to how it kind of holds down our guitars and keeps them in place, which is really, really nice. And it serves well, especially if you have one stereo pair of guitars like this. So without, and then with. That's sounding good. Let's switch over now. Let's pull in, so we'll bypass that and pull in the stereo one here, the DBX 160 stereo. And we'll go same kind of thing here. 2-to-1. We'll add our makeup gain in a second here. I don't think we need the bottom here. We're not going to change anything. They are linked. That's what we want. And we'll kind of do the same amount, 3 dB or so compression on our guitars here. Off the bat here, it doesn't feel like we're getting as much effect from the Waves DBX here. Let's put them head to head though. Let's compare both of them. I like the options here when you're throwing the stereo one on a stereo bus here. Obviously, we only have 3 knobs here, but then we have a duplication if we want to compress the right channel separately. That's a nice option to have with a stereo pair of guitars like this, putting it on the bus. If you want to treat the left and the right separately, that's awesome to have. Same kind of small meter here. We can see how much compression we're doing a little bit better on the Comp 160 here. It looks more like a rack mount unit that you would see, which is kind of the style of the fat channel rather than this big old box here. Let's hit play. We'll start with the Comp 160, and then we'll flip over and see if the effect we're getting from the Waves, the DBX here. They both preserve the low end really, really well and even exaggerate some of that kind of 200 weight you want on electric guitars. One of the nice things about a DBX style compressor is that it's going to give you that nice girth, that nice weight you want on electric guitars. The Comp 160 though gives me that hold that I want. It feels like it holds the pair of electric guitars in place. I don't know that the DBX 160, the Waves one, is doing that. It treats the high end nicely. It treats the high end better. But I like that idea that the Comp 160 is holding those 2 guitars in place. Listen one more time. We're getting nice frequency balance from the DBX, the Wave style one. But the Comp 160 does that job of holding the guitars in place. So starting with the Comp 160 here, then flipping over to the Waves one. So for this instance here on electric guitars, I would probably reach for the Comp 160. I'm liking the way it holds the guitars in place a little bit better than the Waves DBX. I like the frequencies we're getting from the Waves DBX, but that's something you can always boost up later with EQ. If we're not getting that effect of it holding the guitars in place, we could always push more compression, but we're getting more with less here with the Comp 160. Now when it comes to kick drum or drums, I don't know. I like the Comp 160 or the DBX 160 better on the kick in. I felt like it did what it's supposed to do better, but the Comp 160 seemed to preserve the low end a little bit better. So I might reach for that on something like a kick out where I do need that low end. But we're getting more focus and more attack from the Waves DBX 160, especially on the kick in, and it would probably serve better on a snare drum as well. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to level up your drum mixes, then you should definitely go through my 3-step framework for mixing drums workshop. It is a 100% free to watch workshop, and it'll help you dial in a repeatable workflow for mixing pro sounding drums. Thank you so much for watching today. You can get access to that workshop by clicking the link in the description, and I will see you in the next video.